In this journey, you and I will walk through the mindset, strategies, and daily practices that separate the wealthy few from the struggling many. The cocker of this book is simple yet powerful. We will begin by uncovering the psychology of money and how your beliefs determine your financial destiny. Then, we will dive into the way the top 1% handle their income, expenses, and investments differently from everyone else. Chapter 1 is the foundation, the cocker, the blueprint for everything that will follow. And in this opening journey, I want you to picture yourself standing at the entrance of a vast landscape of wealth, where paths branch in many directions, each leading to a different understanding of money, success, and freedom. And my role is to hand you the map the 1% already use, so that you may walk those paths with clarity and confidence. Imagine that wealth is not or excellent, but a system, a design, and like any design it has structure, it has rules, it has order, and once you see the order you cannot unsee it. This chapter will set the stage, the skeleton, the cocker of how this book will unfold, and by the end of this chapter you will know exactly what lies ahead and why it matters. We begin with the mind, because everything starts there. Before the first coin is earned, before the first note is saved, wealth is born as an idea, as a story you tell yourself about what money means. If your story is that money is evil or scarce, you will forever chase it and push it away. But if your story is that money is a tool, a servant, a magnifier of who you already are, then you will learn to control it instead of being controlled by it. That is where our journey begins. The psychology of money, the mindset that separates the 1% from the rest. From there, we will move into the way the wealthy treat income, not as a single paycheck to be depended on, but as a stream among many rivers feeding the same lake. The 1% never rely on one source of income. They build many, so that if one dries up, others keep flowing. Then we will move into spending, and here the difference is stark. While most people spend first and save what is left, the wealthy save and invest first and spend what remains, a simple reversal of order that changes everything, because in that order lies the seed of freedom. After spending comes budgeting, but not the kind of budgeting that feels like punishment or deprivation. Instead, the 1% design systems that work automatically, percentages that flow to investments, to savings, to living expenses, to growth, so that every dollar has a name before it leaves their hands. From there we will talk about saving, but not the kind of saving that lets money sit idle in a bank, losing value to inflation. No, the wealthy save with purpose, as a bridge to investments, as a cushion in storms, as fuel for opportunities, so that savings are never stagnant, but always in motion toward growth. Then we will step into assets, the golden word of wealth. For the 1% spend their lives collecting assets, things that grow in value or produce income, while others collect liabilities disguised as luxuries, and that single choice builds empires or destroys them. Debt will follow, and here lies another divide, because for some debt is a prison, and for others it is a ladder. The wealthy borrow to build, to expand, to invest, never to consume, and they master debt rather than fear it. Risk is next, and while most avoid it, the wealthy embrace it, not recklessly but strategically, calculating, diversifying, and stepping forward while others freeze, because they know that safety is the greatest illusion of all. After risk comes compounding, the quiet miracle that rewards patience and discipline, where small consistent actions multiply into extraordinary results over time. And this alone is the secret whispered from one generation to the next in wealthy families. We will then speak of negotiation, the art of asking, of shaping deals, of knowing when to push and when to walk away, a skill that saves and earns fortunes over a lifetime. Opportunity is next, and here the 1% shine, for they train their eyes to see what others overlook, to recognize patterns and timing, to act boldly when others hesitate, and that skill turns moments into turning points. From there, we will move into lifestyle, The choices that determine whether wealth is fleeting or lasting, for the wealthy often live beneath their means, not in fear but in strategy, enjoying life in ways that are sustainable, measuring success not in possessions but in freedom. Generosity will follow. The hidden principle of wealth, for the wealthy give not only to feel good, but because they understand circulation. That money must flow like a river, not stagnate like a pond, and what flows out with purpose often returns multiplied. And finally, we will reach legacy, the highest level of money mastery, where the 1% think not in days or years, but in decades and generations, creating systems, trusts, teachings, and businesses that last long after they are gone, so that their wealth is not measured only in numbers, but in the impact it leaves behind. That is the cocker, the skeleton of this book, the path we will walk together. And as you hear these words, I want you to imagine that you too can step into this system, because wealth is not about luck, it is about design, and this book is your design, your blueprint, your beginning. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 begins with the truth that every financial journey starts not in the bank, not in the market, and not in your wallet, but in your mind, because money is first and foremost a reflection of beliefs, habits, and stories you carry deep inside yourself. And if those stories are wrong, no amount of earning will ever make you free. Most people inherit beliefs about money without ever questioning them. They hear their parents argue about bills. They watch movies where the rich are portrayed as greedy villains. They grow up listening to phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "We can't afford that." And slowly, quietly, these phrases take root in their minds as truths, even though they are only stories. The wealthy, however, carry a different narrative. They believe money is abundant, that value creates wealth, and that the flow of money is tied directly to the flow of ideas, creativity, and service to others. This is the first great divide between the 99% and the 1%. If you believe money is scarce, you will act with fear, clinging tightly, avoiding risk, and missing opportunities. If you believe money is abundant, you will act with confidence, investing in yourself, taking calculated risks, and multiplying opportunities. The wealthy are not immune to fear, but they refuse to let fear write their financial story. They know that mindset shapes behavior, and behavior shapes results. For example, when an average person receives extra income, perhaps a bonus or a gift, their first instinct is often to spend it on comfort or pleasure, reinforcing the belief that money is for consuming. When the wealthy receive extra income, their first instinct is to ask, "How can this money grow? Where can this be planted to bear fruit?" The difference in mindset leads to a difference in action, and the difference in action creates a difference in destiny. Another example lies in how people view problems. Many see financial struggles as permanent prisons, while the wealthy see them as puzzles, challenges to be solved with creativity and resilience. When they lose money, they don't say, "I'm ruined." They say, "What can I learn? How can I recover? How can I rebuild?" This resilience is born out of belief, and belief is the soil where wealth grows. Think of money like a mirror. It reflects not who you wish to be, but who you already are inside. If inside you feel powerless, that will show up in your finances through debt, scarcity, and constant stress. If inside you feel capable, disciplined, and abundant, that will show up in your finances through savings, investments, and growth. This is why the wealthy invest so heavily in their mindset. They read books, hire coaches, attend seminars, and surround themselves with others who think big, because they know the mind is the engine and money is only the fuel. The poor and middle class often mock these investments, saying, "Why spend money on a seminar or a book?" But the wealthy know that a single shift in mindset can create millions in value over a lifetime. Mindset is also about language. Notice how the average person says, "I can't afford this," and then stops thinking, while the wealthy say, "How can I afford this?" And their brain begins searching for solutions. The first shuts the door, the second opens it. Wealthy people are not born with special brains, they train their brains differently by asking better questions. Their language builds bridges where others build walls. This is why you must become deeply aware of your own money beliefs. Ask yourself, what did I hear about money growing up? Do I believe rich people are greedy? Do I secretly feel guilty when I earn? Do I see wealth as something possible for me or only for others? Until you confront these hidden beliefs, they will sabotage you. The wealthy are not free from limiting beliefs either, but they fight them, challenge them, and replace them with empowering ones. They create affirmations like, "Money flows easily to me," not because the words are magical, but because the repetition shapes the subconscious, reprogramming the mind to see opportunities instead of obstacles. This is not mystical, it is psychological. What you believe determines what you notice, and what you notice determines what you act upon. If you believe opportunities don't exist, you won't even see them when they are right in front of you. If you believe they exist everywhere, you'll start spotting them daily. The wealthy also understand that money is neutral. It is neither good nor evil. It is simply a tool, a magnifier. If you are generous, money makes you more generous. If you are greedy, money makes you greedier. Money amplifies character. That is why wealthy families focus on instilling values in their children before handing them wealth. They know that without the right mindset, inherited money becomes a curse instead of a blessing. In fact, countless studies show that most lottery winners end up broke within a few years, not because they lacked money, but because they lacked the mindset to manage it. The 1% know this, and they teach themselves and their children to think differently, to view money as a servant, not a master, as a resource, not a ruler. They practice gratitude, because gratitude keeps them from feeling scarcity even when times are lean, and gratitude attracts more by shifting focus from what is missing to what is possible. They practice vision, creating clear pictures of the life they want, and then use money as the vehicle to reach it. They practice discipline, knowing that without control of the mind, money will always control them. This is why Chapter 2, though it deals with no numbers, no charts, no calculations, is perhaps the most important of all, because if your mind is aligned with fear, no strategy will save you, but if your mind is aligned with abundance, discipline, and creativity, every strategy will work for you. The wealthy start inside, and that is where you must begin too. Chapter 3 takes us into the heart of income, the stream from which all financial growth begins, and here is where the wealthy separate themselves most clearly from the rest of the world, because while the majority of people cling to a single paycheck as their lifeline, the 1% design multiple streams of income that flow like rivers into the great lake of their financial independence, ensuring that if one dries up, others continue to keep the waters full and abundant. Picture the average person. They trade hours for dollars, often depending entirely on one employer or one skill, and when that job is lost, or that industry shifts, their entire life is thrown into chaos, because their one fragile stream has been cut off. Contrast this with the wealthy, who build systems where money arrives from many directions: salary or business profits, rental properties, stock dividends, royalties from books or music or inventions, ownership in companies, and even interest from lending money. These are not luxuries, but deliberate choices. The wealthy understand that one stream is never enough, because one stream is fragile, and fragility is the enemy of freedom. Their question is not, "How can I earn more?" but rather, "How can I create income that works for me whether I am awake or asleep?" This mindset leads them to build assets that pay them again and again, instead of relying solely on effort that demands constant presence. For example, while most people dream of earning a higher salary, the wealthy dream of creating a business that earns even when they take a holiday, or acquiring an investment property that pays rent long after it has been purchased. or investing in a company whose profits are shared with them through dividends. Each stream they add becomes another layer of security, another wall of protection against uncertainty, another path toward freedom. And this is not only about making millions, it begins with small steps. Imagine someone who writes a digital guide once and sells it online for years, or someone who invests a little in stocks that pay steady dividends, or someone who turns a spare room into rental income. Each of these is a river, small at first, but growing over time. The wealthy see income as a garden where multiple seeds must be planted, watered, and cared for so that harvests come in every season, not just once. But why do most people fail to build multiple streams? The answer lies in comfort and conditioning. Society teaches us to find one job, to depend on one paycheck, and to feel grateful for it, while secretly instilling fear that anything outside of that is risky or unrealistic. The wealthy reject this conditioning. They understand that depending on one paycheck is the greatest risk of all, because your entire life rests on one decision that you do not even control. They ask themselves daily, if this stream ends, what else do I have? And they make sure the answer is never nothing. Multiple streams do not happen by accident. They are designed. The wealthy allocate time, energy, and resources to create them, often starting small, but always starting. They diversify not only their income but their industries, spreading across sectors so that even if one market crashes, others keep flowing. They may have real estate in one corner, technology in another, creative royalties in a third, and perhaps business ownership in a fourth, so that their lake is never dry. And more than that, they understand the power of passive income, the ability to earn without direct labor. Passive income is not magic, but the result of systems. A book that sells, an online course that streams, an investment that grows, a property that pays. These are systems that allow money to arrive whether or not effort is given in the moment. The wealthy focus relentlessly on building such systems because they know their time is finite, but systems can work endlessly. Most people argue that they don't have the time or money to build extra streams, but the wealthy know that time and money appear once you decide it must. They begin small, redirecting a portion of their income into investments, or carving a few hours a week into building a project, and slowly, one river at a time, they build the lake of freedom. Consider also the emotional difference when the average person depends on one income. Fear and anxiety are constant companions because the loss of that one stream means devastation, but when the wealthy live on many, they experience calm because no single event can wipe them out. This calm leads to better decisions because fear is absent, and better decisions lead to even more income streams, creating a virtuous cycle. The wealthy also raise their children with this mindset, teaching them not to dream of one job, but to dream of creating many channels of value, planting seeds early so that by adulthood they already have rivers flowing. This is why generational wealth grows. It is not only money that is passed down, but the mindset of multiple income streams, the belief that dependence on one source is dangerous, and that abundance comes through diversification. And so, Chapter 3 is a call to reimagine income, to stop thinking like a laborer chained to one master, and to start thinking like a designer building many systems. Because the truth is simple: one stream is survival, many streams are freedom, and freedom is the goal of wealth. Chapter 4 is about spending, the silent decision that builds or destroys financial futures. Because while earning is important and saving is wise, it is the way you spend that reveals your true relationship with money and determines whether you are walking toward wealth or drifting toward poverty. And the difference between the 1% and the rest of the world is not that the wealthy never spend, but that they spend with a strategy, a clarity, and a purpose that most people never practice. Think about the way the average person spends. A paycheck comes in, and almost immediately it begins to leak out through bills, shopping, entertainment. impulse purchases, and status-driven choices, and only after all the spending is done do they glance at what remains and call it savings, and often that leftover is so small it makes no real difference. The wealthy, however, reverse this pattern entirely. They save and invest first, and then spend what is left, which means their spending is not random but disciplined, not accidental but intentional. This reversal, small as it seems, is the dividing line between those who build wealth and those who only dream of it, because by prioritizing saving and investing, the wealthy ensure that every month, every year, their financial foundation grows stronger before their lifestyle expands. Another key difference is that the wealthy treat spending as an investment in quality, value, and return, while most people treat spending as a way to escape boredom, impress others, or chase comfort. For example, an average person might buy the newest phone on credit, paying interest for a tool they barely use, while the wealthy might spend that same money on a course, a network membership, or an asset that generates more income. It is not that they are stingy. They spend, but they ask a deeper question first. Will this purchase move me closer to freedom, or pull me further from it? That one question acts as a filter, turning reckless impulses into thoughtful decisions. And while the average person focuses on price, the wealthy focus on value. They are willing to pay more for something that lasts longer, saves time, or creates returns, while rejecting cheap options that drain resources in the long run. This is why the wealthy buy assets like real estate, businesses, and stocks. Instead of filling their lives with liabilities, like luxury cars they cannot afford or gadgets they do not need. But spending is not only about things, it is about habits. The wealthy are mindful of the small leaks in their financial buckets, daily overspending on coffee, subscriptions never used, fees ignored, and purchases made out of habit rather than necessity. They plug these leaks not out of miserliness, but because they understand that money saved in small amounts, when redirected into investments, grows into something powerful through compounding. Every dollar matters, not because they worship money, but because they respect its potential. Yet, it is also important to know that the wealthy do not live miserably, denying themselves all joy. They enjoy spending, but they enjoy it within limits that align with their larger vision. They are not slaves to every whim or trend, because their eyes are on a bigger prize: freedom. This mindset gives them balance. They can enjoy luxuries when appropriate, but they never let luxuries control them. In contrast, many people spend not because they need or even truly want something, but because they are trying to signal success to others, wearing their money on their bodies, or driving it on the streets. While the wealthy often live quietly, modestly, and in control, their true wealth hidden in investments and accounts rather than on display. The irony is that those who look rich often are not, and those who look ordinary may in fact be millionaires because of the way they choose to spend. Another layer to this is emotional spending. Many people use money to soothe emotions, shopping to escape stress, dining out to avoid boredom, traveling beyond their means to feel significant. The wealthy understand emotions but refuse to let emotions dictate spending. They build systems that control money before emotion has a chance to act. Automatic transfers to savings, automated investments, budgets that are followed because they are baked into routine, not because they rely on willpower. By removing emotion from spending decisions, they create stability where others live in chaos. They also understand timing. There is a season to spend, and there is a season to wait. They are patient, willing to delay gratification, knowing that today's discipline creates tomorrow's abundance. Many people collapse under the weight of impatience, spending on credit what they cannot afford in cash, trapping themselves in cycles of debt that strangle future choices. The wealthy, on the other hand, buy when they can truly afford, and they never sacrifice long-term freedom for short-term pleasure. And finally, the wealthy see spending as a reflection of identity. They do not spend to prove who they are. They spend in alignment with who they already know themselves to be. They do not need to show the world their worth through possessions, because their worth is secured by their vision, their discipline, and their freedom. This is why spending is so powerful. It is not just about where your money goes, but about what it says about you. If your spending is impulsive, reactive, and aimed at appearances, your money will always own you. If your spending is strategic, intentional, and aligned with freedom, you will always own your money. So, Chapter 4 is not a warning to stop spending. It is a call to transform spending into a weapon for wealth, to flip the script from consumer to investor, to let every dollar serve your goals instead of stealing from them. Because the truth is simple. You will always spend, but whether that spending builds your cage or builds your freedom is up to you. Chapter 5 is about the power of budgeting, not in the restrictive and joyless sense that many people imagine when they hear the word, but as a framework of freedom, a tool of clarity, and a compass that guides every dollar you earn toward a purpose that serves you rather than enslaves you, because budgeting is not about saying no to everything. It is about saying yes to the right things, and the wealthy understand this truth deeply. Most people resist the idea of a budget because they equate it with sacrifice, with a life of constant denial, with counting pennies and never enjoying themselves. But in reality, a budget is nothing more than a plan, a conscious agreement between you and your money that ensures it flows where you want it to go instead of disappearing into the black hole of unconscious spending. Without a budget, money leaks through the cracks, vanishing into impulse purchases, forgotten subscriptions, random dining, and endless little expenses that add up to chains of financial struggle. With a budget, every dollar has a mission, every expense is accounted for, and your financial life gains a sense of order that transforms chaos into control. The 1% understand that their budget is not a prison, but a strategy, a playbook, a system that creates wealth one decision at a time, and because of this they treat it as non-negotiable. They do not wait to see what is left after spending. They direct their resources at the beginning of each month, setting aside money for savings, investments, and necessities before they consider luxuries, and this proactive habit alone separates them from the majority who live reactively, paycheck to paycheck, always shocked at where their money went. A true budget is not about micromanaging every cent. It is about aligning your money with your values. If freedom is your value, then your budget reflects savings and investments. If security is your value, then your budget prioritizes debt elimination and emergency funds. If growth is your value, then your budget makes room for education, networking, and opportunities that expand your horizons. The wealthy hustle from someone else to mirror society's expectations, but to echo their own priorities, and in doing so, they build lives that feel rich long before the numbers in their accounts reach millions. One of the secrets they know is that budgets are flexible, living documents that adjust with life's seasons. They are not carved in stone. They evolve as income rises, as goals shift, as circumstances change. This flexibility keeps the budget from feeling like a straitjacket and instead makes it a tool of empowerment. Where most people feel guilt when they overspend or when emergencies strike, the wealthy feel prepared because their budgets include margin, buffers, and foresight. They build in fun money, entertainment funds, and allowances for the unexpected, not because they are careless, but because they are wise enough to anticipate reality instead of pretending life will always go according to plan. Another powerful truth about budgeting is that it exposes habits, shining a light on what you truly value versus what you claim to value. Many people say they want freedom, yet their budgets show endless spending on distractions, entertainment, and fleeting pleasures. The wealthy are brutally honest with themselves. They review, track, and analyze their spending, not to punish themselves, but to learn, to refine, and to improve. This honesty creates growth, and growth creates wealth. And here is another lesson. The wealthy do not delegate the responsibility of understanding their budget, even if they have accountants or advisors. They may outsource the mechanics, but they remain intimately aware of where their money goes, because awareness breeds control, and control breeds freedom. A budget is also an antidote to stress. Financial anxiety often comes not from lack of money, but from lack of clarity. When you do not know where your money is going, when bills surprise you, when debt creeps up unnoticed, anxiety grows. The wealthy, by contrast, live with peace because their budget gives them clarity, and clarity gives them confidence. They know their numbers, and knowing their numbers allows them to make decisions with courage instead of fear. But perhaps the most overlooked aspect of budgeting is the power it has to multiply money. A disciplined budget makes saving and investing automatic, and when those habits compound month after month, year after year, the results are extraordinary. The average person who budgets poorly may earn the same salary as a wealthy individual, yet in 10 years one is trapped in debt while the other is financially free, simply because the latter treated budgeting as a non-negotiable skill. Budgeting, then, is not just arithmetic, it is philosophy. It asks you, who do you want to become, and how will your money serve that vision? Without a budget you drift, pushed around by consumer culture, advertising, and peer pressure. With a budget you steer, moving intentionally toward a destination you chose. This is why the wealthy embrace it, not as punishment, but as empowerment. And if you truly want to manage your money like the 1%, you must embrace the truth that every budget is a mirror of your mindset. If your mindset is weak, your budget will crumble. If your mindset is strong, your budget will build an empire. So, Chapter 5 teaches us that the budget is not the enemy of freedom, but its foundation, not the thief of joy, but the guardian of it, not a limit, but a launch pad. Because in the end, every dollar you budget is a soldier in your army, and the question is whether those soldiers are marching in chaos or marching toward your victory. Chapter 6 is about debt, the invisible chain that quietly steals freedom from millions of people, and yet the wealthy treat it with a mindset completely different from the average person. Because while most see debt as either a normal part of life or as an unavoidable burden, the wealthy see it as a tool that must be handled with precision, discipline, and strategy, and they know that the way you relate to debt determines whether you build wealth or remain enslaved to it. For many people, debt begins innocently: a student loan to pursue education, a credit card swipe for an emergency expense, a car loan to make commuting easier, or a mortgage to secure a home. But soon the habit of borrowing grows into a lifestyle, and what began as temporary becomes permanent, leaving them trapped in monthly payments that drain energy, resources, and peace of mind. The wealthy understand that this cycle is one of the greatest destroyers of financial independence, because every dollar sent to pay interest is a dollar stolen from future investments. So they develop a ruthless approach to managing debt. They avoid bad debt at all costs. They eliminate it quickly when it appears, and they only leverage good debt when it can multiply wealth. The difference between bad debt and good debt is something most people ignore. Bad debt is borrowing for consumption, for things that lose value the moment you buy them, like clothes, gadgets, or luxury cars purchased on credit, while good debt is borrowing to acquire assets that generate income, such as rental properties, business investments, or other opportunities that create more cash flow than the cost of the loan itself. The wealthy understand this distinction like a sharp line drawn in the sand, and they never blur it, because to them bad debt is poison, while good debt is a lift them higher. The average person, however, often confuses the two, justifying consumer purchases as investments, when in reality they are simply indulging wants that keep them trapped in repayment cycles, And this confusion is why many hardworking individuals never escape financial struggle despite decent incomes. Another important lesson the wealthy embrace is speed. When they find themselves in debt, they do not linger. They do not make minimum payments for years. They attack it with urgency because they know that every extra dollar paid toward principal today saves multiple dollars in interest tomorrow, and this aggressive mindset creates momentum. Meanwhile, many people allow debt to linger like a permanent roommate in their financial lives, paying only what is required and accepting the idea that they will always owe something to someone. Debt becomes a background noise in their lives, normal but corrosive, always taking away freedom. The wealthy never normalize debt. They see it as the enemy of freedom, something to fight, eliminate, or harness intentionally, but never something to casually accept. There is also a psychological dimension. Debt weighs on the mind, creates stress, and limits risk-taking, because when you owe money, your choices shrink, your courage weakens, and your creativity often bows to fear. The wealthy protect their minds from this trap by keeping their liabilities low and their assets high, creating a financial environment where their decisions are made from strength, not desperation. When they do use debt strategically, it is never reckless. It is calculated, measured, and backed by a plan. For example, they may take out a loan to acquire a rental property that generates more monthly income than the loan payment, turning debt into a cash flow engine, but they never take on loans simply to impress others or to consume depreciating goods. Another truth is that the wealthy are patient. They delay gratification rather than financing pleasures today with the promise of future payments. They know that true wealth is not built on borrowed money, but on owned assets, and so they cultivate the discipline to wait, to save, to invest before they spend. This discipline is what allows them to escape the hamster wheel of debt that traps so many people, and it is this mindset shift that anyone can adopt if they are willing to trade short-term satisfaction for long-term freedom. But escaping debt also requires awareness. The wealthy track their obligations, know their interest rates, and prioritize which debts to eliminate first, often attacking high-interest credit card debt with laser focus before addressing lower-interest loans. They create strategies like the avalanche method or snowball method, applying intensity and consistency until the chains are broken, while many others ignore their debts, hoping they will somehow disappear, only to find them growing larger with time. And the wealthy also understand that debt is not just a financial issue, but a cultural one, because society has normalized borrowing as a way of life, encouraging people to finance everything from phones to vacations, and the constant marketing of buy now, pay later seduces people into slavery disguised as convenience. The wealthy refuse to play this game. They stand apart, often appearing conservative or even boring in their spending choices, but beneath that discipline lies the secret of freedom. They know that when you own your life outright, without lenders controlling your time and energy, you live with a confidence and peace most people never experience. So, Chapter 6 is not only a warning, but also a call to action, a reminder that debt can either be the heaviest shackle or the sharpest tool, depending on how you handle it. If you want to manage your money like the 1%, you must learn to see debt as they do, avoid it when it is destructive, attack it when it is consuming you, and leverage it only when it multiplies wealth. In the end, freedom and debt cannot live in the same house. One will push the other out, and it is up to you to decide which one stays. Chapter 7 is about saving, the discipline that separates those who dream of wealth from those who actually build it, because saving is not simply about stacking money in a bank account. It is about creating the habit of paying yourself first, of carving out a portion of your income that belongs not to bills, not to entertainment, not to society's endless demands, but to your future, your freedom, and your security. And the wealthy understand that saving is the cornerstone upon which every fortune is built. Most people treat saving as an afterthought. They spend on everything they feel they need or want, and then if there is anything left over, they call that savings, but more often than not, there is nothing left, because spending always expands to match or exceed income. The wealthy reverse this order completely. They save before they spend. They make saving automatic, almost sacred, so that no matter what comes, their future self is always provided for. They do not wait until it is convenient to save, because they know that convenience never comes, and they do not wait until they earn more, because they know that if you cannot save when you earn little, you will not save when you earn much. Since saving is not about the number in your paycheck, but about the discipline in your heart. The wealthy also understand that saving is not just a financial act, but a psychological one. It trains the mind to value the future over the present, to prioritize long-term security over short-term indulgence, to see money not as something to burn quickly, but as a tool to create stability and opportunity. They save to build emergency funds because they know life is unpredictable, and when emergencies arise, having savings turns crises into inconveniences rather than disasters. They save to invest because they know that savings is the seed that grows into assets, and assets are what generate wealth. They save for opportunities because they know that when a chance comes, a property deal, a business opening, a partnership, it rarely waits, and only those with cash ready can seize it. The average person, by contrast, often misses these chances because they are too busy paying off debts or living paycheck to paycheck. Saving is the silent builder of wealth, the discipline that works quietly in the background while others chase flashy shortcuts. And yet the wealthy never underestimate its power. They also understand that saving must be intentional. They give their savings a name, a purpose, a destination. Money saved without purpose often leaks away, spent impulsively the moment temptation arrives. But money saved with a mission, whether for an emergency fund, an investment, or a future goal, stays protected and grows. This purpose-driven approach turns saving from a dull chore into a powerful motivator. The wealthy are also strategic about where they save. They know that keeping large sums idle in a low-interest account is unwise, but they also know that an emergency fund must be safe and liquid, so they balance between security and growth, keeping some savings easily accessible for life's surprises while channeling the rest into investments that multiply. For them, saving is not about hoarding, it is about positioning money for maximum impact. Another truth they embrace is that saving is not about how much you make, but how much you keep. Many people with high incomes still live in financial stress because their lifestyles consume everything they earn, while others with modest incomes quietly build wealth by consistently saving a portion of every paycheck. The wealthy know that consistency matters more than size in the beginning, because habits compound. Saving even a small amount regularly trains the discipline muscle, and over time, those small amounts grow into significant sums. They are patient, understanding that saving is not about instant results but about long-term transformation, and that patience is what allows them to harness the power of compounding, where money earns money and time becomes the greatest ally. But beyond numbers, saving also builds confidence. When you have money saved, you walk differently, you think differently, you make choices differently. You are not desperate, not easily manipulated, not trapped by fear, because you know you have a cushion, a foundation, a backup. The wealthy protect this confidence by saving religiously, and it is this inner security that allows them to take bold risks in other areas of life. Meanwhile, those without savings live with constant anxiety, one paycheck away from disaster, one emergency away from collapse, and this anxiety influences every decision, often pushing them further into poor financial choices. Saving is the shield against this cycle, and the wealthy wear it proudly. But saving also requires sacrifice, and the wealthy accept this without resentment. They are willing to say no to unnecessary luxuries today so they can say yes to true freedom tomorrow. They are willing to live below their means, not as a punishment, but as an investment in a life without financial chains. They do not see sacrifice as loss, they see it as trade, trading momentary pleasure for lasting stability. And finally, the wealthy teach us that saving is not optional, it is the minimum requirement for financial independence. If you do not save, you will never invest. If you do not invest, you will never build wealth. Saving is the gateway, the first step, the habit that unlocks every other habit, and it begins not with a windfall, not with a miracle, but with a decision to keep something for yourself before the world takes it all away. So, Chapter 7 reminds us that saving is not just about money. It is about mindset, discipline, and vision, and until you learn to save consistently, you will always be a puzzler to the quiescent. But once you master saving, you hold the keys to a future of freedom, security, and endless possibility. Chapter 8 is about investing, the bridge that carries you from simply saving money to truly multiplying it, because while saving builds the foundation, investing builds the empire, and the wealthy understand that without investing, money sits idle, slowly eroded by inflation, whereas with investing, money becomes a worker, a soldier, an engine that generates more money. And this is the mindset that separates the 1% from everyone else. Most people fear investing. They see it as risky, as something reserved only for experts or the already wealthy, so they avoid it, keeping their money in banks where it earns little or nothing, and in doing so they guarantee that their financial growth will remain stagnant. The wealthy, however, embrace investing not recklessly but strategically. They see it as essential, non-negotiable, and they treat every dollar as potential capital that must be put to work. They understand that money has energy, and when that energy is locked away in savings accounts, it remains dormant, but when directed into investments, it multiplies, creating streams of income that flow back to them. For the wealthy, investing is not about gambling or chasing quick wins. It is about patience, discipline, and alignment with long-term goals. They know that investing is not a one-time event but a lifelong journey, and they diversify across different assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, commodities, not because they are greedy, but because they respect risk and want to spread it wisely. The average person may see investing as optional, something to try later in life when extra money appears, but the wealthy know that time is the greatest ally of investment, and the earlier you begin, the more powerful compounding becomes, turning small contributions into massive growth over decades. They do not wait until they have millions to invest. They invest small amounts consistently, knowing that the habit matters more than the amount in the beginning. Another key difference is that the wealthy educate themselves relentlessly. They study markets, trends, cycles, and opportunities because they know ignorance is the greatest risk of all. While others rely on rumors, tips, or luck, the wealthy rely on knowledge, research, and trusted advisors, making decisions grounded in facts rather than emotions. And yet, they also know that no investment is guaranteed, so they approach it with both courage and humility, prepared for ups and downs, committed to the long game, and unwilling to panic in the face of short-term volatility. They embrace the truth that markets rise and fall, but discipline and patience always reward those who stay the course. Another aspect the wealthy understand is the difference between active and passive income. They invest not only for growth in value, but also for cash flow, choosing assets like rental properties, dividend stocks, or businesses that provide steady income month after month, allowing them to live off returns rather than salaries. This is the ultimate freedom. When your investments pay for your lifestyle, you are no longer trading time for money. You are living from the fruits of your foresight. The wealthy also distinguish between speculation and investing. Speculation is chasing trends, gambling on short-term gains, or trying to time the market, while investing is patient, methodical, and tied to fundamentals. They may take calculated risks, but they never confuse gambling with strategy. They also understand leverage, sometimes using borrowed money not to consume, but to amplify investment opportunities that produce higher returns than the cost of the debt. But unlike the average person who borrows to buy liabilities, the wealthy borrow only when the math is sound and the risk is managed. Investing, for them, is not emotional, it is mathematical, strategic, and purposeful. They ask key questions before every move. Does this align with my goals? Does this generate cash flow or appreciate in value? What are the risks and are they acceptable? How will this investment behave in the long term? These questions guide them, while most people invest impulsively, driven by hype, fear, or greed. Another truth the wealthy hold is that investing is not only about money, it is also about mindset. They invest in themselves first, through education, skills, health, and relationships, knowing that the highest return investment is the one that improves their own capacity to create and manage wealth. They also invest in networks, surrounding themselves with people who challenge, inspire, and open doors to new opportunities. For them, investing is not limited to stocks or property. It is a lifestyle of planting seeds everywhere, financial, intellectual, and relational, that later grow into abundance. And finally, the wealthy understand that investing is about freedom, not just fortune. They invest so they can choose how to live, where to live, and what to do with their time. Because when your money works for you, you reclaim your life from the grind of working only for money. So, Chapter 8 teaches us that investing is not a luxury, it is a necessity, and it begins not with millions, but with the mindset of putting every dollar to work, of refusing to let money sleep when it could be earning, of embracing the power of compounding and the discipline of patience. If you want to manage your money like the 1%, you must cross the bridge from saving to investing, from hoarding to multiplying, from fear to wisdom, because in the end, investing is not just about growing wealth, it is about building the life you dream of and securing a freedom that money alone can never buy. Chapter 9 is about building multiple streams of income, the practice that transforms financial stability into financial abundance, because the wealthy know that relying on a single source of income, no matter how large, is like standing on one leg. It may hold for a while, but one unexpected push can topple everything, and the difference between those who survive setbacks and those who collapse lies in the number of pillars supporting their financial house. Most people depend entirely on a job, exchanging time for money in a cycle that feels secure but is actually fragile, because a layoff, a health issue, or a market downturn can suddenly shut down that income stream, leaving them scrambling to cover expenses. The wealthy, however, build systems where money flows in from multiple directions, so even if one stream dries up, the others continue to provide, ensuring that their lives and goals remain uninterrupted. They understand that wealth is not built on one paycheck, but on many flows of cash working together, like rivers feeding into a great ocean of financial security. These streams often include earned income, investment income, rental income, business income, royalties, dividends, and more, and the key is that they are diversified across industries and risk levels. For example, a wealthy individual might earn a salary from a company they own, receive rental income from real estate, collect dividends from stocks, earn royalties from intellectual property, and enjoy profits from side ventures, all while their money continues compounding in investments. This diversification does more than just increase income, it creates resilience, because when one sector suffers, another may thrive, balancing the overall flow. The wealthy also know that building multiple streams of income is not about chasing everything at once, but about building one strong stream at a time until it is stable, and then expanding into the next. The average person often tries to juggle too many side hustles, burning out without creating true stability, but the wealthy move strategically, building slowly and intentionally, ensuring that each stream is reliable before adding another. They understand leverage, using their skills, money, and networks to create income that does not depend entirely on their time, because true wealth comes when you stop trading hours for dollars and start building systems that work whether you are active or not. This is why passive income is central to their strategy. Dividends, rental cash flow, automated businesses, and royalties continue to flow even while they sleep, while active workers must constantly show up to earn. But the wealthy also know that passive income is not truly passive in the beginning. It requires setup, effort, investment, and discipline before it can run on its own, and they are willing to put in that work up front because they see the long-term reward. Another distinction is that the wealthy align their income streams with their strengths and passions. They do not blindly chase trends or jump into businesses they do not understand, because they know that income rooted in skill and knowledge is more sustainable than income built on hype. They choose opportunities they can master, and they scale them with strategy, turning their talents into engines of wealth. They also invest in systems and people, delegating tasks and building teams so that their income streams can grow beyond the limits of their own time. While most people think in terms of earning a paycheck, the wealthy think in terms of ownership, owning businesses, owning assets, owning intellectual property, because ownership multiplies income in ways employment never can, and they constantly reinvest their profits to create new streams, never letting money sit idle, always directing it to build more channels of flow. Another truth is that multiple streams of income are not just about money, they are about freedom. When you have one income, you are tied to it like a chain, forced to endure conditions you may not like, because you cannot risk losing your only lifeline. But when you have many incomes, you gain power, the power to walk away from toxic jobs, the power to pursue opportunities you truly desire, the power to live life on your terms. The wealthy live with this freedom, not because they are luckier or smarter, but because they refuse to accept the fragility of a single paycheck and build alternatives for themselves. They also know that creating multiple streams requires patience and sacrifice. Working long hours at first, reinvesting profits instead of spending them, taking calculated risks, and saying no to distractions until the streams are secure. But once those streams are flowing, the reward is exponential, because money coming in from many directions creates not only wealth, but also peace of mind. The average person may think this lifestyle is out of reach, but the wealthy prove that anyone can start small, perhaps with a side hustle, a small investment, or a creative project, and grow it steadily into something significant. The key is consistency and vision. So, Chapter 9 reminds us that financial independence does not come from one paycheck, no matter how large, but from building a network of incomes that protect, multiply, and liberate you. The wealthy never stand on one leg, they build many, and that is why they stand strong when others fall. Chapter 10 is about mastering the art of delayed gratification, a principle that separates those who live paycheck to paycheck from those who build wealth that endures across generations. Because the truth is that money management is not just about how much you earn, but about how much discipline you can exercise over your impulses. The wealthy understand that every dollar spent today on fleeting pleasures is a dollar that cannot be invested to multiply tomorrow, and they live by the wisdom that small sacrifices in the present yield exponential rewards in the future. For most people, the urge for instant gratification is powerful. They want the newest phone, the designer clothes, the expensive dinners, and the luxury car even if they cannot afford it, so they rely on credit cards, loans, and debt to satisfy their cravings, digging deeper into a financial hole while convincing themselves that they deserve it, or that they will figure it out later. But the wealthy resist this temptation. They train their minds to see beyond the present moment, to imagine the and disciplined choices, to visualize what a dollar invested can become over time. And this perspective changes everything. For example, the average person may see 200 as a shopping spree, while the wealthy see it as seed money that, when invested, could grow into thousands over years. This shift in mindset requires patience. But patience is a skill that can be cultivated, and the wealthy practice it relentlessly. They do not deny themselves pleasure forever, but they prioritize financial freedom over temporary indulgence, knowing that true luxury is not about appearing rich today, but about being secure and free tomorrow. Consider this. If you spend $5 a day on coffee, it seems insignificant, but over a year that is nearly $2,000, and over decades invested wisely, it could turn into tens of thousands of dollars. The wealthy are aware of this hidden cost of instant gratification, while most people ignore it, focusing only on the immediate satisfaction rather than the long-term consequence. They ask themselves with every purchase, is this adding to my wealth or subtracting from it? Will this give me a return or only temporary pleasure? And because they discipline themselves to answer honestly, they build habits that compound into greatness. The wealthy also use delayed gratification as a way to train resilience, because when you deny yourself something now, you strengthen your self-control, and self-control is the cornerstone of financial success. They know that markets fluctuate, opportunities require patience, and investments take time to mature, so they cultivate a mindset that can wait, endure, and persist without giving up too soon. In contrast, those who chase fast money, quick returns, and get rich quick schemes often lose everything, because impatience makes them reckless. The wealthy, on the other hand, accept that wealth is a marathon, not a sprint, and they pace themselves accordingly. Delayed gratification also applies beyond money. It shapes how they view career growth, relationships, and lifestyle choices. They are willing to work long hours now to build a business that pays off later, willing to live below their means for years, so they can live above them for decades, willing to invest in education and skills that do not pay off immediately but open doors in the future. This mindset sets them apart in every aspect of life. They do not need to impress others with flashy possessions, because they are more concerned with their balance sheets than with their image. They know that appearances fade, but wealth endures, and by focusing on the latter, they eventually gain both. The wealthy also design systems to make delayed gratification easier. They automate savings, set investment rules, and create budgets that remove temptation from their daily lives, because they understand that willpower alone is fragile. But systems are strong. They surround themselves with people who support their vision, avoiding environments where peer pressure encourages wasteful spending. They replace the thrill of spending with the thrill of watching investments grow, training their brains to find pleasure in progress rather than consumption. Over time, delayed gratification becomes second nature, not a painful sacrifice, but a natural way of life, and the rewards become so evident that the temporary sacrifices feel insignificant. Imagine the difference between someone who spends every dollar they earn and someone who consistently invests a portion of their income. After 10 years, the spender has little to show for their hard work, while the investor has built a foundation of wealth that continues to expand without requiring constant effort. This is the power of delayed gratification, the invisible force that multiplies wealth quietly in the background. Chapter 10 reminds us that mastering delayed gratification is not about denying joy forever, but about choosing wisely when and how to enjoy the fruits of your labor, because true wealth means having the freedom to enjoy life without fear of debt or financial ruin. The wealthy understand that luxury feels better when it is paid for with cash, and when its purchase does not jeopardize their future. They know that financial freedom is the ultimate reward of patience, And once you achieve it, you can enjoy the finest things in life without guilt, stress, or burden. But the journey requires discipline, self-control, and the courage to say no today so you can say yes tomorrow. That is the lesson of delayed gratification, and that is why the wealthy embrace it as one of the core pillars of their financial philosophy. Chapter 11 is about understanding risk and reward, a principle that sits at the heart of wealth creation, because every financial decision carries a degree of uncertainty, and the difference between those who build wealth and those who lose it lies in how they approach, evaluate, and manage that uncertainty. The wealthy know that avoiding all risks is impossible, and in fact it is dangerous, because playing it too safe often guarantees mediocrity, but at the same time, they do not gamble recklessly with their money. Instead, they approach risk strategically, weighing potential rewards against potential losses and always moving with a clear plan. They view money like a tool, one that can be placed in different arenas, each with its own balance of danger and opportunity, and they master the ability to decide where their tool will work best. Most people, however, are driven either by fear or by greed. Fear causes them to hide their money in savings accounts that barely beat inflation, while greed pushes them into get-rich, quick schemes and risky ventures they do not understand, often wiping out their hard-earned savings. The wealthy avoid both extremes, instead walking the middle path of calculated risk, knowing that the greatest wealth is built not by chance but by discipline, knowledge, and patience. For example, when investing in the stock market, the average person might chase hot tips or panic at the first sign of a downturn, but the wealthy study trends, diversify their portfolios and accept short-term volatility in exchange for long-term growth, because they understand that markets reward patience. Similarly, in business, the wealthy do not throw money at every idea. They analyze the potential, test the waters, and invest gradually, scaling only when they see proven results. They treat risk like a fire, dangerous if uncontrolled, but powerful when harnessed. One of the secrets of the wealthy is that they learn to separate good risks from bad ones. A good risk is one where the potential upside outweighs the downside, where the losses are limited but the gains are significant, where the rules of the game are understood and preparation is possible. A bad risk, on the other hand, is one where you bet more than you can afford to lose, where you have no control or knowledge, and where emotion rather than strategy drives your decision. The wealthy avoid the latter entirely. While embracing the former as necessary steps toward growth, they also spread their risks across multiple areas, a concept known as diversification, ensuring that no single failure can destroy them, because they know that even the smartest investor or entrepreneur cannot predict every outcome. They do not fear failure, but they prepare for it, making sure that if one venture collapses, it does not take down their entire financial house. Risk management for them is not about eliminating uncertainty, but about controlling exposure, limiting losses, and maximizing the chances of survival and success. Another truth is that the wealthy invest heavily in knowledge before taking risks. They study markets, industries, and opportunities, surrounding themselves with advisors, mentors, and experts, because they know that information reduces uncertainty. While the average person may call something risky because they do not understand it, the wealthy make it less risky by learning, by researching, by asking questions others ignore. They also cultivate emotional control, because one of the biggest dangers in risk-taking is not the risk itself, but how people react to it. Panic, fear, impatience, and greed destroy more wealth than market crashes ever could. The wealthy train themselves to stay calm under pressure, to act rationally even when others are driven by emotion, and this discipline allows them to make decisions that others cannot. They understand that risk and reward are two sides of the same coin, and the greater the potential reward, the greater the risk often is, but they do not shy away from this reality. They embrace it, knowing that without risk there is no growth, and without growth there is no wealth. They are willing to endure short-term discomfort for long-term gain, willing to invest when others are fearful, willing to act when others hesitate, because they trust their preparation and their vision. For them, risk is not something to be avoided, but something to be mastered. And this mastery allows them to build fortunes while others remain stagnant. Chapter 11 teaches us that to manage money like the 1%, we must learn to step into risk with courage, but not recklessness, with strategy, but not paralysis, with knowledge, but not arrogance. We must understand that wealth is built by those who dare to play the game, but who also know the rules, the limits, and the costs. Risk will always visit it, study it, and manage it wisely. Will find that reward follows naturally, because fortune does not favor the reckless, it favors the prepared. Chapter 12 is about the power of networking and relationships, because while money itself is a critical tool in building wealth, the truth is that opportunities, knowledge, and access often come through people rather than through numbers alone, and the wealthy understand this deeply, treating relationships as one of their most valuable assets. Unlike the average person who may think of networking as casual socializing or attending events to collect business cards, the wealthy approach it as a long-term strategy rooted in value exchange, trust, and mutual growth. And this distinction explains why their networks are powerful engines of wealth creation rather than shallow connections that fade with time. They know that every relationship carries potential. Potential for learning, potential for collaboration, potential for partnership, and they actively cultivate relationships that align with their goals and values. For the wealthy, networking is not about using people. It is about building bridges, creating win-win situations, and surrounding themselves with individuals who elevate their vision. They are intentional with their time, choosing to engage with mentors, industry leaders, innovators, and like-minded peers who can challenge them, inspire them, and open doors they could not access alone. The average person might resist networking, seeing it as uncomfortable or manipulative. But the wealthy embrace it as a necessary skill because they know that one introduction, one conversation, one relationship can change the trajectory of their financial life forever. They attend conferences not just to learn but to connect. They join mastermind groups not just to share ideas but to build alliances, and they maintain their relationships with consistency and sincerity, investing time and effort into staying connected. Another secret of the wealthy is that they give before they ask. They provide value, share knowledge, offer help, and demonstrate reliability, knowing that relationships built on giving are far stronger than those built on taking. They also respect the importance of reputation, because in the world of high achievers, your name and credibility travel faster than you do, and a strong reputation built on integrity and generosity creates opportunities that money alone cannot buy. The wealthy also understand that networking is not limited to their own level. They build across levels, connecting with those above them for mentorship and guidance, with peers for collaboration, and with those coming up behind them for influence and legacy. This layered approach ensures that their networks are dynamic, constantly evolving, and expanding in multiple directions. They use technology wisely, leveraging platforms like LinkedIn, private forums, and online communities to connect globally, but they also value in-person interactions where authenticity and trust are more deeply forged. More importantly, the wealthy do not limit networking to professional circles. They see value in relationships across all aspects of life, from community involvement to friendships, because they know that opportunities can emerge in unexpected places. They also recognize that networking is not a numbers game but a quality game, preferring a smaller circle of trusted, influential, and supportive people over a large network of shallow contacts. And this quality first approach gives them depth and strength in times of need. The wealthy invest in these relationships with consistency, checking in, offering help, remembering birthdays, showing up when it matters, because they know that strong bonds are built over time, not through single transactions. They also practice the art of listening, genuinely caring about others' goals, dreams, and challenges, because empathy and understanding create stronger ties than self-promotion ever could. In contrast, many people approach networking with a transactional mindset, only reaching out when they need something, and this weakens their influence and credibility, while the wealthy build continuously, knowing that the time to cultivate relationships is before you need them. Networking also protects the wealthy from isolation, because when challenges arise, they can call on advisors, partners, or peers for guidance and support, while those without strong networks often struggle alone. This network effect amplifies wealth, because information about new investments, business opportunities, or shifts in markets often flows through personal connections before it reaches the public, giving the well-connected a decisive advantage. The wealthy respect this advantage, but never take it for granted, nurturing their networks with humility and authenticity rather than arrogance or entitlement. They also know that networking is a skill that can be learned, not just a talent for extroverts, and they practice it deliberately, setting goals for connections, following up with people, and developing communication skills that make them memorable and trustworthy. Chapter 12 reminds us that wealth is not just about what you know or what you have, but also about who you know and how deeply you cultivate those relationships. Money can open doors, but people can build bridges that last a lifetime, and those bridges often lead to places you could never reach alone. To manage money like the 1%, we must learn to see relationships as wealth in themselves, to invest in people with the same care we invest in stocks or real estate, and to understand that in the economy of life, trust, reputation, and connection are currencies that compound in value the more we give and the more we nurture them. Chapter 13 is about the importance of continuous education and self-improvement, because wealth is not just a matter of managing money, but of constantly upgrading the mind that makes decisions about money. And the wealthy understand that their most valuable asset is not their bank account, but their knowledge, their perspective, and their ability to adapt to an ever-changing world. They live by the principle that the moment you stop learning, you start declining, and they treat education not as something that ends with school, but as a lifelong commitment, a daily practice of sharpening their intellect and expanding their awareness. Most people stop learning once they graduate, relying on the same set of skills and limited knowledge for decades, and then they wonder why their income stagnates while the world around them evolves. But the wealthy remain students forever, reading voraciously, attending seminars, learning from mentors, listening to audiobooks, and investing in courses, because they know that every new piece of knowledge adds a tool to their arsenal. They do not see learning as an expense, but as the highest return investment available, because one new idea, one new strategy, or one new perspective can multiply wealth far more than any stock or property ever could. They also understand that education is not limited to formal settings. It happens in every conversation, every book, every failure, every success, and they cultivate a mindset of curiosity that drives them to ask questions, to seek answers, and to challenge assumptions. They know that the world is changing faster than ever. Industries rise and fall, technologies disrupt, markets shift, and the only way to thrive in such a world is to keep learning, adapting, and evolving ahead of the curve. In contrast, many people cling to old ways of thinking, resisting change and refusing to update their knowledge, and in doing so, they fall behind, trapped by outdated beliefs that no longer serve them. The wealthy embrace change, seeing it not as a threat but as an opportunity, and they position themselves to benefit from it because they have trained their minds to remain flexible and resilient. Another key is that the wealthy invest not only in knowledge, but also in personal growth, emotional intelligence, communication skills, leadership, and discipline, because they know that success is not just about technical knowledge, but also about mindset and character. They read books on psychology, study the habits of high achievers, and reflect on their own behavior, always seeking ways to improve themselves. Because they know that wealth grows to the level of the person managing it, and if you do not grow, your wealth will eventually shrink. They also value mentorship, surrounding themselves with people who have achieved more than they have, learning directly from experience rather than trial and error, and they are humble enough to admit they do not know everything. In fact, the wealthy often attribute much of their success to learning from others, whether through biographies, coaching, or direct relationships, and this humility keeps them open to new ideas. They also teach others, because teaching reinforces their own knowledge and strengthens their networks, and this culture of sharing magnifies their growth. For them, every mistake is also a lesson. They do not see failure as a permanent defeat, but as feedback, as tuition paid to the school of life, and they extract wisdom from every setback to ensure they emerge stronger and wiser. Continuous education also protects them from stagnation, because it keeps their minds sharp, their creativity alive, and their decisions informed, while those who stop learning often become rigid, fearful, and reactive. The wealthy cultivate the habit of daily improvement, whether it is reading a few pages, reflecting on their goals, or learning a new skill, because they know that small, consistent growth compounds over time into extraordinary mastery. They also invest in environments that encourage growth, joining masterminds, surrounding themselves with ambitious people, and deliberately seeking out conversations that stretch their thinking, because they know that who you spend time with influences what you learn. Chapter 13 reminds us that wealth without wisdom is fragile, and the foundation of lasting wealth is built in the mind first, then in the wallet. To manage money like the 1%, you must treat your mind as the ultimate bank, constantly making deposits of knowledge, guarding against the withdrawals of ignorance, and investing in skills and wisdom that yield infinite returns. Education and self-improvement are not luxuries. They are necessities, and those who commit to them will always find ways to thrive, no matter how the world changes. Chapter 14 is about the discipline of living below your means, a principle that may sound simple, but is one of the most powerful wealth-building habits practiced by the 1%, because no matter how much money flows into your life, if your lifestyle expands faster than your income, you will remain trapped in a cycle of stress, debt, and insecurity. The wealthy understand that the secret to financial freedom is not about looking rich, but about being rich, and that difference comes from controlling spending, resisting lifestyle inflation, and directing excess income toward investments rather than indulgence. For many people, every raise or bonus becomes an excuse to upgrade: new cars, bigger homes, luxury vacations, expensive gadgets, believing that higher income should automatically mean higher spending. But the wealthy resist this trap, knowing that wealth is measured not by how much you spend, but by how much you keep and multiply. They understand that appearances can be deceptive, that many who look wealthy are drowning in debt, while those who quietly live below their means are building empires in silence. This discipline is not about deprivation or living a joyless life. It is about priorities, about choosing long-term security and freedom over short-term thrills. The wealthy delay unnecessary luxuries until their assets can pay for them, living by the principle that you should let your money work for you before you spend its fruits. For example, instead of buying a luxury car on credit, they might invest in a rental property, and once the property produces consistent income, that income pays for the car, making the luxury sustainable rather than a burden. They create systems where their lifestyle is funded by assets rather than wages, and that transformation is only possible because they first chose to live below their means. They know that every dollar saved and invested today grows into something far greater tomorrow, and they resist the urge to trade future abundance for present appearance. Living below your means also builds resilience, because when unexpected expenses, downturns, or emergencies occur, those who have disciplined themselves to spend less always have a cushion to fall back on, while those who stretch their income to the maximum collapse under pressure. The wealthy design their lives intentionally, budgeting carefully, tracking expenses, and asking themselves whether each purchase adds value or simply satisfies a temporary desire. They are not immune to temptation, but they train themselves to see the bigger picture, to value peace of mind over possessions, and to understand that financial freedom feels better than any designer label or flashy car ever could. In contrast, many people use spending as a way to signal success, to impress others, or to fill emotional voids, and in doing so, they sabotage their ability to build real wealth. The wealthy flip this equation, caring little about outside validation, because they know that true confidence comes from financial independence, not from external approval. They practice modesty in lifestyle not because they cannot afford more, but because they choose control over chaos, security over show, and freedom over false appearances. This is why you will often find millionaires driving ordinary cars, living in homes below their net worth, or shopping without obsession, because their focus is on multiplying wealth, not displaying it. Another truth is that living below your means is not a sacrifice once it becomes a habit. It becomes liberating, because it frees you from the constant pressure to earn more just to keep up with your lifestyle. It creates space for options, for career changes, for investments, for travel, for freedom, because you are no longer chained to the demands of excessive spending. It also instills discipline, a muscle that strengthens every time you choose to save instead of spend, and that discipline extends into other areas of life, shaping habits of patience, self-control, and intentionality. The wealthy teach this lesson to their children, instilling in them the value of money, the dangers of overspending, and the joy of building before indulging, because they know that generational wealth is destroyed when future heirs cannot control their desires. They understand that a life of freedom is built not by extravagance but by balance, by aligning your spending with your values and your long-term goals. Chapter 14 reminds us that to manage money like the 1%, we must master the art of restraint, of saying no to things that do not serve our future, of choosing investment over impulse, of valuing freedom over appearances. It is a principle that may not sparkle on the surface, but it shines brightly in the long run, because those who live below their means today will live far above their means tomorrow, not through debt or illusion, but through true wealth, true security, and true independence. Chapter 15 is about creating a legacy and thinking beyond your own lifetime, because managing money like the 1% is not just about accumulating wealth for personal comfort, but about ensuring that the fruits of your labor continue to impact your family, your community, and even the world long after you are gone. And the wealthy understand that true success is measured not only by what you achieve, but by what endures after you. While most people focus only on short-term needs, paying bills, buying possessions, living for today, the wealthy think in terms of decades and generations, designing systems that allow their wealth, values, and influence to outlive them. They know that money without a plan often disappears within 1 or 2 generations, because heirs untrained in discipline, values, or money management squander it on excess and poor decisions, so they build not just financial assets, but educational and moral legacies, teaching their children and grandchildren the principles of stewardship, discipline, and responsibility. They write wills, establish trusts, create foundations, and preserve their wealth, not just to pass it on, but to ensure it is used wisely. They think of wealth as a tool to create lasting impact, funding education for future generations, supporting causes they believe in, building institutions, and leaving behind opportunities that shape lives long after they are gone. This vision of legacy extends beyond family. Many wealthy individuals devote portions of their fortunes to philanthropy, not for recognition, but because they see themselves as stewards of resources entrusted to them, and they believe it is their duty to use those resources for the greater good. The wealthy also know that a true legacy cannot be built on money alone. It must be built on values, principles, and the character you instill in others. That is why they take the time to model financial discipline, to share stories of their struggles, to teach lessons of patience, hard work, and resilience, because they know that if they pass down money without wisdom, the money will vanish. But if they pass down wisdom with money, the wealth will grow. Legacy also means creating businesses or assets that outlast their own leadership. Companies that employ people for generations, intellectual property that continues to generate royalties, investments that fund future innovations, and structures that make their names synonymous with growth, opportunity, and impact. In contrast, those who live only for themselves often leave little behind, their wealth consumed during their lifetimes or dissipated immediately afterward, their names forgotten once their possessions are sold off. The wealthy resist this fate by deliberately building something bigger than themselves, something that carries meaning, purpose, and value beyond their personal consumption. Another element of legacy is mindset. Wealthy people understand that the way you think about money, the way you approach opportunities, the way you handle challenges, is part of what you pass on, and they strive to model abundance thinking, resilience, and vision so that future generations inherit not just assets, but a powerful way of approaching life. They create family traditions around financial education, involving their children in discussions about money, investments, and philanthropy, so that knowledge is not lost but strengthened with each generation. They also guard against entitlement, teaching their heirs to respect money and to work for their own success rather than relying passively on inheritance. In this way, legacy becomes a living force, something that shapes character as much as it provides security. The wealthy also extend their legacy outward, leaving marks on communities and industries by building schools, funding hospitals, supporting research, or mentoring future leaders, because they recognize that their influence can echo far beyond their personal lives. They measure their wealth not only in numbers, but in the number of lives they improve, the opportunities they create, and the good they inspire. For them, legacy is the final test of success. Did their money end with them, or did it begin something that continues to grow? Chapter 15 reminds us that managing money like the 1% is not just about building for yourself, but about planting seeds for the future, seeds that grow into trees that shelter, feed, and inspire generations to come. To build a legacy means to think beyond your own lifespan, to see wealth as a river that flows through you, nourishing others along the way, and to ensure that when your time ends, the river continues to flow stronger than ever. The wealthy live with this vision, and it is why their impact is felt long after they are gone, because they manage their money not just for a lifetime, but for eternity.